It was just after 5 p.m. on a quiet Monday in Sydney, the kind of day when the city seemed paused, waiting for something to happen. Teresa Marsden's phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. A message appeared that would shatter the calm. "I love you. I'm sorry. I'm not happy." The words were simple, yet carried a weight that no parent should ever bear. Teresa's hands trembled as she tried to call her daughter, but the phone went straight to voicemail. Hours stretched like days. The fading sunlight cast long shadows across the rooms, as if mirroring the growing dread in her heart. Friends and neighbors were alerted, yet every phone call and frantic search yielded nothing. As darkness fell, the Marsdens found themselves at the edge of a nightmare. Renee's car had been discovered near a cliff, infamous for past suicides. Emergency services were on scene, but the answers they sought remained elusive. What unseen pressures had driven Renee to this moment? Was it love, betrayal, obsession, or something darker, lurking beneath the surface? The threads of her life were tangled in ways no one could have anticipated. That night, Sydney bore witness to a tragedy that would haunt the city, the family, and anyone who would later hear her story. Renee Marsden was born on October 15, 1992, in Sydney, New South Wales, a city alive with color, noise, and constant movement. Her parents, Teresa and Hamie, separated when Renee was only 2, leaving a void in her young life that would later be filled by Mark Marsden, a man who became more than a stepfather. He became a pillar of stability and care. By the age of 6, Renee and her mother had moved in with Mark, and in 2000, the couple married, formalizing the family unit. Together, they welcomed 3 more children, Luke, Jake, and Monique, creating a household brimming with energy, laughter, and a sense of belonging. Friends and relatives described the Marsdens as affectionate and close-knit, a family that nurtured dreams and celebrated successes. Renee thrived in this environment. She had a bright, curious mind and an infectious smile that drew people in. A personality that combined cheerfulness with an empathetic nature. Renee's bond with her mother, Teresa, was particularly profound. They shared not only everyday moments, but also private conversations about hopes, fears, and the future. This connection became a refuge during turbulent times, a safe harbor that nurtured Renee's early sense of identity. It was in this home, with love interwoven into daily life, that Renee learned to trust, to hope, and to believe in the power of human connection, even though the world outside her family would later test that trust in unimaginable ways. Among Renee's earliest friendships, the one that would leave the deepest, most enduring mark was with Camila Seiden. Their bond began in primary school, born from shared laughter, mutual curiosity, and the simple joys of childhood. They confided in each other, played together, and navigated the small triumphs and setbacks that define early friendship. Yet, as adolescence emerged, the dynamic between them began to shift. Innocent disagreements escalated into more serious conflicts, sometimes even physical altercations, leaving emotional wounds that lingered long after visible bruises had faded. Renee confided in her mother Teresa, recounting moments when Camila had heard her hair pulled, shoves exchanged, and words sharp enough to pierce deeply into her psyche. Despite these early fractures, their connection endured. What once had been simple friendship began to morph into something far more complicated, a bond that blurred the line between affection and psychological control. Rumors circulated about a brief romantic involvement, though the truth was murky and only truly known to Renee and Camila. Even when circumstances created distance between them, life seemed determined to draw them back together, setting the stage for a reconnection that would later prove catastrophic. The intricacies of their relationship grew more apparent over time. Camila's intensity and possessiveness, once masked by laughter and shared memories, revealed a darker desire for dominance and control. Renee's trusting, empathetic nature left her vulnerable, often caught in a cycle of affection mixed with subtle manipulation that she could not fully recognize. What had begun as a source of joy and companionship slowly transformed into a battleground of psychological power. This friendship, which had once offered comfort and support, became the foundation for a tragedy that no one, not even those closest to Renee, could have foreseen. In hindsight, every warning sign, every small act of control, foreshadowed the destructive path that lay ahead, highlighting just how thin the line can be between love and emotional abuse. By 2008, Renee had found her place in the adult world, training as both a receptionist and a hairdresser. It was at a beauty salon that she met Angus Jong, a young man drawn to her charm, her warmth, and the gentle way she interacted with everyone around her. Their relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by youthful passion and the kind of optimism that only comes in first love. Together, they drafted a future on paper for children, a dog, a life imagined as perfect and unbreakable. But reality intervened. In April 2010, Renee stumbled upon messages that hinted at betrayal. Angus denied wrongdoing, but trust, once fractured, was difficult to restore. Renee, hurt and heartbroken, ended the relationship. Her world, once filled with dreams and plans, became an emotional minefield. Weeks passed with lingering sadness and sleepless nights. The once confident, cheerful young woman began to withdraw, her bright spirit overshadowed by heartbreak. It was in this vulnerable period that Camila stepped in, offering a seemingly kind solution, a new companion named Braden. But what began as an attempt at consolation would spiral into a psychological labyrinth that Renee could never escape, proving that the heart, when desperate, can be both resilient and dangerously trusting. Camila introduced Renee to Braden's, claiming he was a former acquaintance and a trustworthy friend. Renee, seeking solace from heartbreak, did not question it. Their connection began through text messages and social media, a romance that existed purely in the digital realm. Braden crafted an elaborate narrative. He had survived a devastating motorcycle accident that killed his best friend, and was serving a 2-year prison sentence. Despite never hearing his voice or seeing his face, Renee became deeply invested. The digital correspondence filled a void left by past heartbreak, offering love, attention, and validation. Braden's constant messages created the illusion of intimacy, trust, and emotional safety, even though it was all a carefully constructed lie. The fantasy of being loved and needed became a dangerous crutch, one Renee clung to with unwavering belief. Her mother Teresa sensed unease, but could not deny the light Braden seemed to bring to her daughter's eyes. What Teresa did not yet know was that every word, every claim, every declaration of love was a meticulously crafted deception. The person Renee loved and trusted was never real. It was a fiction designed to manipulate, to control, and eventually, to destroy. For 18 months, Renee existed in a world meticulously crafted by Braden's fiction. Every laugh, every hope, every plan for the future was intertwined with a man who was nothing more than a shadow of someone else, a digital fabrication designed to control, isolate, and manipulate. Even the simplest interactions with her mother Teresa were tinged with tension. Braden intruded into daily life, sending messages to Teresa that questioned her loyalty and subtly attempted to isolate Renee from the very people who loved her most. The emotional strain was relentless. Trust and familial bonds were twisted into tools of control, and the line between reality and the illusion grew increasingly blurred. Renee went so far as to tattoo Braden's name across her chest, symbolizing a commitment to a relationship that existed only in the imagination of someone else. She envisioned weddings, children, and a life together, openly sharing her dreams with friends and family who watched helplessly, unsure how to intervene. But as the supposed prison release date came and went without any tangible reunion, her hopes crumbled. The weight of deception pressed down with crushing force, leaving bruises that could not be seen but were profoundly felt. Despite the clear warning signs, Renee found herself unable to break free from the narrative. The digital persona had become her emotional anchor, a source of comfort amid heartbreak, even as it was the very instrument of her suffering. Friends and family urged her to step back, to reclaim her life, but the manipulation had taken root so deeply that resistance seemed impossible. Renee's story is a chilling demonstration of the power of psychological control, particularly when cloaked as love, support, and understanding, showing how, in the digital age, even the warmest human emotions can be weaponized to devastating effect. Desperation tightened its grip on Renee. After months of emotional manipulation and heartbreak, she tried to move forward, seeking solace in a relationship with Ian, a co-worker, 12 years her senior, who seemed stable, protective, and grounded. For a brief period, it appeared that she might escape the shadow of Braden's fabricated presence. But the illusion refused to release her. Threatening messages and emotionally coercive texts began resurfacing, reminders that the digital chains forged over 18 months were not so easily broken. Ian warned her repeatedly, imploring her to cut all ties with the man she believed to be her soulmate. Yet the psychological hold Camila had established over Renee was relentless. She clung to the relationship, convinced it was real, unable to disentangle her heart from the cruel mirage. August 5, 2013, began like any other day. Renee woke, went through her routine, and presented the appearance of normalcy to her family. But beneath that surface lay a maelstrom of despair, confusion, and emotional exhaustion that no parent could possibly detect. By late afternoon, Teresa received a text that would shatter her world. Panic gripped her as she called and searched desperately, the hours stretching endlessly with no response. When Renee's car was later found abandoned near the cliff's edge, the reality of the emotional devastation mirrored the physical evidence. A young woman, vibrant and full of potential, had been pushed to the breaking point, caught between the tangible world and the cruel, constructed illusion of a fabricated digital love, leaving grief, confusion, and heartbreak in her wake. The investigation revealed a truth so shocking it seemed almost unreal. Braden Spittery had never existed. Every message, every call, every moment of heartbreak that Renee had endured for over a year and a half was a meticulously orchestrated illusion, crafted entirely by Camila Seiden, the friend Renee had once trusted above all others. For 18 months, Camila had juggled two separate identities, carefully timing messages and calls to maintain the facade of a long-distance incarcerated boyfriend. Every detail was calculated, every interaction engineered to create dependency, hope, and, ultimately, despair. The scale of the deception was staggering. Friends and family began to recount patterns of obsessive behavior. Camila would call relentlessly, sometimes more than 20 times in an hour, demanding attention and emotional submission. She monitored Renee's every move, carefully managing how and when Renee interacted with others, even subtly sowing doubts about her relationships outside the control she exerted. Renee, emotionally drained and increasingly isolated, had attempted to sever ties to reclaim her independence, but each attempt was met with manipulation, guilt, and pressure that wore her down day by day. Camila's control was total, invisible, yet suffocating, turning trust and affection into weapons. The very qualities that made Renee warm-hearted and trusting, her empathy, her openness, her desire to love and be loved, were exploited against her. It was a harrowing demonstration of how psychological abuse can operate silently, leaving victims trapped in a web they cannot see until it is too late. In Renee's case, that invisible grip ultimately drove her to a moment of irreversible despair. On the day of her disappearance, Camila delivered the final, crushing blow. Disguised as Braden, she sent a single message that tore through Renee's heart like a jagged blade, ending the relationship with cold precision. The young woman, already fragile from months of emotional manipulation and isolation, felt the walls of her world collapse around her, confused, desperate, and seeking some glimmer of explanation or comfort. Renee called the prison where Braden supposedly was, hoping to hear his voice, to understand what had gone wrong. But the truth that met her was shattering in its simplicity. There was no Braden. He had never existed. Every word, every promise, every shared dream had been an illusion, carefully constructed to control and torment her. At that time, Australian law did not recognize such acts of identity deception as criminal offenses unless financial exploitation was involved. Camila, the architect of this cruel web, faced no legal consequences. She walked free, her life continuing, seemingly unscathed, while Renee's family was left to confront an unimaginable void. Grief, anger, confusion, and helplessness converged into a painful reality. Their daughter, once bright, joyful, and full of promise, had been methodically dismantled by someone she had trusted completely. It was a haunting reminder of how profoundly psychological abuse can impact a life, leaving scars that are invisible, yet irreparably deep. Teresa and Mark Marsden transformed grief into advocacy. Campaigning for legal reform, they sought to protect others from similar psychological abuse. After years of persistence, a forensic inquest acknowledged Camila's deception, though legal consequences remained elusive. The photos used to craft Braden's persona were traced to an unrelated man, Cameron Lang, a stranger whose image was stolen to manipulate Renee. Her story became a grim warning about the dangers of online deception and the devastating power of emotional abuse, illustrating the fragile boundary between trust and manipulation in the digital age. Renee Marsden's life and death highlight the terrifying potential of emotional manipulation, the vulnerability inherent in trust, and the devastating power of psychological control. Her story is not just a personal tragedy, it's a stark warning about the subtle, insidious ways in which human emotions can be exploited, particularly in the digital age. In a world dominated by screens and virtual connections, appearances can be deceiving, messages can conceal dangerous intentions, and deception can become a weapon capable of destroying lives without leaving a single visible scar. Renee's trust, her openness, and her capacity to love were all used against her, turning a once joyful existence into a labyrinth of confusion, despair, and heartbreak through the tireless advocacy of her parents. Teresa and Mark Marsden, Renee's legacy has taken on a broader significance. Their work shines a light on the urgent need for awareness, education, and legal protections that can prevent others from suffering similar psychological harm. Renee's story resonates far beyond the boundaries of her family, as a call to society to recognize emotional abuse for the serious threat it is, to equip individuals with the tools to detect manipulation, and to foster environments in which trust is nurtured rather than weaponized. Her life, though tragically cut short, continues to inspire vigilance, compassion, and reform, reminding the world that the mind, like the body, must be protected from harm, and that the consequences of emotional exploitation are heartbreakingly real and, sometimes irreversible,